I remember being 13, sitting on my bedroom floor and feeling like my skin didn't quite fit. School was a social minefield. My emotions were scattered, and the only thing that actually made sense was popping a VHS tape into the player and escaping into someone else's story. Growing up is inherently messy. We all go through that gauntlet of bad haircuts, first heartbreaks, and the quiet, terrifying realization that we have to figure out who actually are. And in those isolated moments, sitting alone in front of a television screen, we aren't looking for absolute perfection. We're looking for proof that someone else understands the awkwardness. We want a hero who trips on their own shoelaces, says the wrong thing, and still somehow manages to be okay in the end. Drew Barrymore navigated these life phases in the public eye. We watched her stumble and recover in real time, a recognizable presence that moved through the world with the same vulnerability we felt. Examining her roles reveals a specific kind of trajectory. It illustrates what it looks like to be human in Hollywood, showing how a career built on vulnerability can actually endure. To understand how she built that connection, you have to look at the pressure cooker of 1980s Hollywood. Being a child actor meant living under intense, relentless visibility. The industry expected compliance and precision from kids barely old enough to read a script. Then came her breakout role in E.T. the Extraterrestrial. As Gertie, Barrymore provided the unfiltered imagination that grounded an entire science fiction blockbuster. At 7 years old, she captured the pure, chaotic magic of childhood, screaming at an alien 1 minute and dressing him up the next. But childhood doesn't last forever. In Firestarter, her persona began to shift. The pigtails were still there, but now they belonged to a young girl harboring a dangerous, uncontrollable power. It mirrored the internal rebellion of adolescence that was just starting to bubble up in her own life. And then she closed the door on her child star era. By taking the opening scene in Scream, she subverted the expectations placed on her. She delivered a performance of raw, visceral terror that immediately defined her as a mature, fiercely capable adult actor. Surviving the microscope of those early years gave her a distinct edge. She had publicly navigated her own intense growing pains, and that resilience created an authenticity that audiences intuitively trusted. That hard-earned trust set the stage for her next evolution. As she moved into her 20s, she stepped onto the red carpet as the reigning queen of heartfelt cinema. The Wedding Singer proved she could anchor absurd, outsized comedy with completely grounded emotion. She created a level of natural chemistry that made you genuinely care about a waitress and a washed-up musician in 1980s New Jersey. In Ever After, she took the dusty, passive Cinderella trope and dismantled it. Her version of the fairy tale heroine was an intellectually curious, fiercely independent woman who could carry a prince on her back just as easily as she could rescue herself. Never Been Kissed leaned directly into the cringe-worthy trauma of high school. She played an awkward journalist trying to rewrite her teenage years, showing us that triumph comes from finding the courage to simply be yourself. With 50 First Dates, she explored the complex reality of a romance resetting every morning. It required profound vulnerability, portraying love not as a one-time spark, but as a deliberate, sometimes difficult, daily choice. These characters normalized the idea that we are allowed to be messy. They gave a generation permission to embrace their own quirks and find value in the process of starting over. Watching her journey from a child star to an empowered producer and director mirrors our own capacity to take control of our narratives and actively pursue joy. In her talk show, that same energy carries over to the red sofa, proving that being human is far more compelling than being perfect. We fall, we make mistakes, and we figure it out as we go. Human resilience grows from sharing those struggles openly, creating a current of empathy that pulls everyone forward. From a suburban house hiding an alien to a diner in Hawaii, her characters have always felt like an extension of us. So, looking at this list, which of these movies defined a specific era of your life? Drop into the comments and tell me what memories or emotions they bring back for you. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more great videos coming your way. You know that feeling you get with a certain movie star where it feels like you've actually grown up with them, like their story has been the soundtrack to your own life? For me, and honestly for millions of us, that person is Drew Barrymore. Her face, her energy, it's just been a constant on our screens, pretty much since we were kids. And because of that, her journey feels so deeply personal, you know? It's like we've been on the sidelines rooting for a friend this whole time. She's so much more than just an actress. She's become this incredible symbol of resilience, a real-life story of a Hollywood phoenix who rose from the ashes not just once, but again and again, to completely redefine what success even means, and to do it all on her own terms. It's really a story about finding your own light, losing it in the dark, and then figuring out how to build your very own sun. To really get who Drew is, you have to go all the way back to the beginning. Because she wasn't just born into a family, she was born into a full-blown dynasty. I mean, the Barrymores are true Hollywood royalty. We're talking about a legendary line of incredible actors that goes back for generations on the stage and screen. Her great-grandparents, Maurice and Georgie Drew Barrymore, her iconic grandparents, John Barrymore and Dolores Costello, every one of them celebrated actors. So for Drew, a career in Hollywood wasn't just, a dream or a possibility. It felt completely inevitable. It was a path that was practically paved for her before she could even walk. And if that lineage wasn't enough to seal the deal, her godfather was Steven Spielberg. It was like the universe itself conspired to place this tiny little girl right in the heart of the cinematic world. Her destiny, it really seemed, was already written in the Hollywood stars. And then, when she was just 6 years old, came the role that would change literally everything. I will never, ever forget seeing E.T. for the first time. I can still feel that sense of pure, uncut childhood magic just washing over me in that dark theater. And there she was, as little Gertie. That iconic, piercing scream when she first lays eyes on E.T., the way she so casually dresses him up in her doll's clothes, her fierce, powerful belief in this strange little alien. It was just breathtaking. She wasn't just reciting lines. You could feel her living that childhood wonder right there on the screen. Spielberg famously said he cast her because she had the exact right imagination for the part, and you could feel the truth of that in every single frame. In an instant, this little girl with the most memorable dimples and this almost supernatural screen presence became one of the most famous child actors of all time. We all fell completely in love with Gertie. And in doing so, we fell in love with the little girl who brought her to life so vividly and so honestly. Now, just 2 years after the pure, heartwarming magic of E.T., she took on a role that was its polar opposite, a total 180. In Firestarter, which was adapted from a pretty dark Stephen King novel, she was no longer the sweet little sister from next door. She was Charlie McGee, a little girl with terrifying pyrokinetic powers who was being hunted by this dark, sinister government agency. What a pivot, right? The film was so intense, it was dark, and it showed a kind of range that was just shocking for a kid her age. 1 minute, she could be so vulnerable and terrified, her big eyes just filling with tears, and in the next, she could unleash this unbelievable fiery power, her face completely set with this fierce determination. It was really the first sign that there was so much more to her than just being cute. It was a hint of the fire, the intensity, and the deep, dramatic talent she was holding inside, even as a little kid. From that incredible, soaring high of being Hollywood's favorite kid, the story takes a really sharp and painful turn. And this is a part of her life that was just splashed all over every tabloid, but it's one that I always think about with so much empathy. I mean, can you even begin to imagine being one of the most famous children on the entire planet? The pressure, the insane expectations, the complete and total absence of a normal childhood? It's an unimaginable weight for any adult, let alone a little girl. She was thrust into this very adult world, partying in places like Studio 44 when she should have been at slumber parties. When I look back, I don't see a story of failure. I see a story of a little girl who got lost in a world that just wasn't built to protect a child. She bravely documented this chaotic period herself in her own autobiography, Little Girl Lost. It's this raw, shockingly honest account of her struggles, and she published it when she was only 15. But as she began that long, difficult fight to get her life back, all of that turmoil, all of that complexity started to show up in her work. It felt like her art was imitating her life, or maybe her art became the way she could process her life. She started taking on these roles that were edgier, way more complicated, and miles away from the little girl in E.T. This really marked the beginning of her first great reinvention. It was a conscious, deliberate effort to shed her past and build a new identity, both for herself and for her career. She wasn't Hollywood's little girl anymore. She was a survivor, and her roles were about to reflect that fight. This film, Poison Ivy, was such a critical piece of that transformation. She played Ivy, a manipulative, seductive, and ultimately very dangerous teenager who weasels her way into a wealthy family. It was this full-on teen angst role that just completely shattered any leftover image of her as an innocent child star. Her performance was so rebellious, it was risky, and honestly, it was exactly what she needed to do at that moment. This was her planting a flag and declaring to the world, and especially to Hollywood, that she was an adult actress who was capable of playing complex, even unlikable characters. She took the reins of her own narrative, using her on-screen persona to finally move beyond the wild child label the media had so cruelly stuck on her. It was a bold, brave move, and you know what? It totally worked. And then, after all that darkness, came this glimmer of the light that we all know and love today. Boys on the Side felt like such a huge, hopeful step in her comeback. She played Holly, this sweet, almost naive young woman who's escaping an abusive relationship, and she ends up on this life-changing road trip with two other women, played by the amazing Whoopi Goldberg and Mary Louise Parker. It was this beautiful, touching, and really honest story about the incredible healing power of female friendship. And Drew she stole the whole movie. She was so open, so vulnerable, and so unbelievably likable, you just couldn't help but root for her. This role felt like a reintroduction, reminding audiences of that warmth and natural charm that had always been there, but was now so much deeper, colored by a life she'd already lived. Okay, so if Boys on the Side was the whisper of her comeback, then Scream was the definitive blood-curdling shout that she was officially back on the A-list. Oh my gosh, I will never forget the collective gasp in that movie theater. Drew Barrymore, the biggest star in the entire film, her face plastered all over the posters, is killed off in the first 15 minutes. It was so audacious, it was iconic, and it was an absolute stroke of marketing genius. Her performance as Casey Becker, watching her go from flirty and confident to utterly, primally terrified, it's still one of the most memorable and horrifying opening scenes in horror movie history. That one scene, as short as it was so incredibly powerful that it cemented her return to the very top of Hollywood. It wasn't just a role, it was a major statement. So, after fighting her way back into the spotlight, Drew was not about to just sit back and be an actress at the mercy of Hollywood's whims. No way. She had been through way too much to ever let other people control her career and her story again. So, in this move of incredible foresight and just pure power, she co-founded her own production company, Flower Films, with her friend and business partner, Nancy Juvenin. This was her literally taking the lead. It was her way of guaranteeing that she could create the kinds of stories she wanted to tell. Stories with real heart, with optimism, and with strong female characters. It was about building a space where she had a voice, not just in front of the camera, but behind it too. Ever After was so much more than just another Cinderella movie. In a lot of ways, it was the perfect first mission statement for her new company. By stripping away all the magic and treating the story as historical fiction set in Renaissance France, it gave the whole tale this grounded, real-world strength. And her portrayal of Danielle was a total revelation. She wasn't some passive damsel in distress waiting for a prince to show up. She was intelligent, she was resourceful, and she was fierce. She was a woman who quoted Thomas More and saved herself. The critic Roger Ebert said she brought poignancy and fire to the role, and that is the absolute perfect description. This film really cemented her status as this formidable leading lady, one who could carry an entire film with grace, intelligence, and that fiery spirit she has. As the very first official film to come out of Flower Films' Never Been Kissed had this immense weight on its shoulders. Drew has talked about the unbelievable pressure she felt. At the time, Hollywood was really skeptical of actors becoming producers, so if this movie failed, her whole producing career and her company could have been over before it even really started. She said she was so stressed out she had to clench her stomach the whole time. And to make matters worse, she remembered getting these calls from the studio complaining that her character, the adorably awkward Josie Geller, looked too unattractive in her braces and frilly outfits. But she stuck to her vision, and the result was a film that was hilarious, so heartfelt, and a huge box office success. She proved every single one of them wrong. And now we get to one of my absolute favorite chapters in her entire career. The beginning of one of Hollywood's most beloved, most enduring on-screen partnerships, Drew Barrymore and Adam Sandler. It just feels right when you say their names together, doesn't it? Their chemistry is legendary. But it wasn't some accident or a lucky guess by a casting director. It all started with Drew's deep down conviction, this gut feeling she had that they were just meant to work together. She just knew they could create something special, something timeless, and she decided she was going to make it happen herself. It's just another amazing example of her taking control and trusting those incredible instincts of hers. I just absolutely love this quote. She had this vision. She wanted to be a modern-day Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy. You know, a classic, iconic Hollywood pair, but with a weird, quirky twist that was totally their own. So she actively went after Adam Sandler and asked for a meeting. She later joked that with her purple hair and a leopard print coat, they looked like the worst blind date you've ever seen. But during that meeting, she told him she was convinced they were cinematic soulmates. It was that belief, that raw passion, that led directly to their first unforgettable movie together. She felt it in her bones, and pretty soon, audiences all over the world would feel it too. And here it is, The Wedding Singer. Oh, from their very first scenes together, that chemistry was just, you could feel it, it was electric. She played Julia, the sweet, charming waitress, and he was Robbie Hart, the heartbroken wedding singer with the flair for the dramatic. They were perfect foils for each other, and their connection just felt so genuine and so warm. And then you wrap all of that in this perfect package of 80s nostalgia, the music, the fashion, the hair. The whole film was an absolute delight from start to finish. It was charming, it was funny, it was deeply romantic, and it became an instant classic, cementing Drew and Adam as one of the all-time great romantic comedy duos of their generation. So a few years later, they reunited for 50 first dates. And somehow, they managed to capture lightning in a bottle a second time. And this was not your typical romance. She played Lucy, a woman who loses her short-term memory every single day because of a brain injury. Now that's a role that could have so easily become a cheap joke, but Drew brought so much heart and so much depth to it. Her performance was truly unforgettable. The script had actually been bought by Adam's production company, but Drew had read it, fallen in love with it, and pushed really hard to be a part of it. She saw the beauty and the romance in it, and once again, she commanded the screen and created another timeless classic with her cinematic soulmate. Just when you thought you had her figured out as the undisputed queen of romantic comedies, she pivoted again, harder than ever before. This next phase of her career showed her evolution into a full-blown action star and a true powerhouse producer. This was all about her proving she could do it all, not just star in a massive blockbuster franchise, but actually shape it from the ground up, lead it to huge success, and prove to everyone that she was one of the most versatile and bankable talents in all of Hollywood. She was just breaking every mold and flat out refusing to be put into any kind of box. And Charlie's Angels was the ultimate expression of this new chapter. As Dylan Sanders, she was the feisty, rebellious, free-spirited heart of the trio. It was just so much fun to watch her kick butt on screen. But the really important story here is what was happening behind the scenes. As a producer with Flower Films, she was absolutely instrumental in shaping the movie's entire vibe. She helped create this fun, stylish, and incredibly empowering film that celebrated female friendship and strength in a way that just felt so fresh and exciting. It became a massive global hit that catapulted her, Cameron Diaz, and Lucy Liu to even greater levels of stardom. She wasn't just an angel, she was the architect. And that brings us to the Drew we see today. Her whole journey has been this extraordinary winding arc, and now it feels like it's really come full circle. In her modern-day evolution, she has transformed yet again, this time into a beloved and hugely successful talk show host. On The Drew Barrymore Show, she's become this incredible beacon of optimism, of kindness, and of genuine, heartfelt compassion. The very same open heart and infectious energy she brought to all of her film roles now radiates from our TV screens every single day. It's like all the struggles, all the triumphs, all the reinventions, they've all culminated in her becoming this enduring positive light in the world. So, what does it take? I think Drew Barrymore's life is the answer to that very question. Her story is the ultimate Phoenix arc. She started as a child prodigy, a little girl born into Hollywood royalty and shot to global fame. Then she went through this period of intense public turmoil, a lost girl just trying to navigate the crushing pressures of a world she was never ready for. But then she rose. She fought her way back, not just to reclaim her career, but to take complete and total control of it. She became a producer, a director, an action hero, a rom-com queen, and a self-made icon who rewrote her own narrative. She didn't just survive, she thrived, turning all of her experiences into strength and turning her platform into a source of pure joy for millions. From Gertie to Josie Geller, from Casey Becker to Dylan Sanders, her career is like a timeline of our own lives. Looking at all these incredible films together, it's hard not to just feel this wave of nostalgia. Each one represents a different era, a different version of Drew, and a different memory for all of us. For me, it was the absolute pure magic of E.T. as a little kid, and later, the complete joy and romance of The Wedding Singer, which I probably watched a million times. But I would really love to know, which Drew Barrymore film made you feel something special? Which one is tied to a powerful memory for you? Please share your stories in the comments. I would be fascinated to read them. Her journey is just a testament to resilience, and her films are the beautiful milestones we all got to share along the way. Thanks so much for joining me on this look back at the absolutely incredible career of Drew Barrymore. Her story is truly, truly one of a kind. If you enjoyed going on this journey with me, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more great ideas.